And welcome to our All Cardinals podcast. It is week one of the National Football League season, and we've got a full house here tonight. And, of course, in poker, you have to have 5 cards, but we've got 4, but it's still a full house. I'm Howard Balzer. Millard Thomas is here, Alex Weiner, Donnie Druin, and we're going to talk some Cardinals. We're going to talk a little bit about the league as we head toward the Cardinals season opener against the Tennessee Titans, but, of course, the start of another season. It's been a long time coming. And the one quick comment I'll make is this is how the NFL has people eating out of its hands, because it seems like forever ago that the Buccaneers won the Super Bowl, but it has been a long time. The longest calendar month off season in any sport. And all it does is get people ramped up. They can't wait. Now it's all here. I will say this though, guys. In about 8 weeks, we're going to be going, oh, my God, where did half the season go? How did it go this fast? Of course, it'll be week 9 that'll be the halfway point, because there are 18 weeks this season and 17 games for each team. So just quickly, before we get into the real meat of this, just some quick comments from each of you on just how great it is that here we are in week 1 of the NFL.
Yeah, as fun as going through all like the rosters and the roster moves and doing like draft analysis, and I mean all that is incredibly fun to do, and that's why the NFL sort of has a year-long cycle. Eventually, we need to get to some football, and I'm excited that we're here. And I think it's an awesome first matchup for the Cardinals too. I know we'll talk about it more in a little bit, but what an awesome test for them to go on the road against a playoff team to start things off.
Yeah, I'm excited for the football season like most. It hasn't felt too long, I guess, because the way the basketball schedule has felt, there's been a lot of sports on over these last few months. So it hasn't felt like too long of a time for me personally for the NFL season. But I'm in like 7 or 8 fantasy leagues, so I'm all in on this football season. I got a little bit of every player from every team, basically. So I'm watching everyone. I got my NFL Red Zone ready. I'm ready for this Sunday.
Yeah, I feel like there's only so much you can do, so much you can write about the season when it comes to season previews, training camp battles, all that good stuff. I mean, we've covered all of it here at allcardinals.com or si.com/NFL/Cardinals, but it's just some actual X's and O's to break down. I think we're all excited to actually dig deep into it. And then, like we talked about with the team today, what a better opening week test in the Tennessee Titans.
We heard Millard say 7 or 8 fantasy teams. Seriously? Are you kidding me? All right. Alex, how many fantasy leagues are you in?
I'm in 2. I think that's a good number.
Yeah. Donnie?
Okay. I will say I had to cut down. I'm only in 2 like Alex, but I know many people like Millard who are in probably too many fantasy leagues. Millard, shout out to you. That's another job in itself, my dude.
I'm actually addicted to fantasy, so I apologize to no one.
I always enjoyed fantasy, but I am in 0 for about, I think, the 5th consecutive year. I don't seek it out. No one seeks me out. But when they did, I would politely say no. And one of the reasons is it's too frustrating. I would get so frustrated when I have a really good – I never played more than 1 at a time, but I get so frustrated when I would be in a league and I had a good team and I'd lose one of those games 92-90 or whatever, and then someone else would get a win, winning 22-21 or some crazy thing like that. And I said, no, I'm not playing. It takes up too much mind. I have too many things going on. I just don't even want to devote thought to it. So I'm not in anyway.
Props.
There we go. So 0, 2, 2, and 7, 6 or 7. He doesn't even know how many he's in. He's in so many.
I have no idea. It's too many.
So let's move on. Here we are. It's Cardinals. Of course, that's the focus of all this. And we've had it on the website now for a couple of days. But as they get ready for this home opener, just an interesting roster, an interesting vibe around this team. This whole Cliff Kingsbury, they have to get into the playoffs for Cliff Kingsbury and Steve Keim to keep his job. So there's all this ancillary stuff swirling around what I think can be a pretty good football team. But boy, this division is just so ridiculous. And I've said this to a few people, guys, that if the Cardinals were in the NFC East, they'd probably be the favorites, maybe co-favorite with Dallas and Washington. If they're in the NFC North, they'd probably be being picked as the second place team behind the Packers. South, probably second place behind Tampa Bay with all the questions around the Saints now with Drew Brees retiring. But in this division, you can just as easily finish first or fourth. And so it's just so hard, so tough. Just think of it this way. The Cardinals were 2-4 in the division last year. If they were to do that again, they'd have to win 8 of 11 games just to win 10 and go 10-7. That's a tall order no matter who you're playing.
Yeah, and winning 3 games in the division is also a tall order because
yes.
You talk about it, 2-4 last year, and the division got better than it was last year. The Rams no longer have Jared Goff; they have Matthew Stafford. That opens up so many doors for Sean McVay and this offense, and I'm very curious to see what they look like. But he must be a kid in a candy shop with a quarterback who could throw down the field like Matthew Stafford. With the 49ers, they had sort of the injury year from hell last year. And they were kind of an unrecognizable team when they played the Cardinals in Week 16, which didn't stop them from beating the Cardinals in Week 16. But with all their guys back, the potential of Trey Lance, we'll see exactly when he gets in. That's a team that's going to be much better than last year. And the Seahawks, I think, will be about as good as they were last year. So it's a division that got much more difficult. While the Cardinals, I think, improved, but how much did they improve comparatively to the other teams in this division will be a key for the season.
Yeah, and I'm not sure they have to make the postseason for Keim and Kingsbury to keep their jobs, but they definitely can't have the second half that they had last season. They had the first half for the entire year where they're competitive, their offense looks like it's clicking. Then I think that could be enough for Kingsbury and Keim because, look, they're the consensus number 4 team right now in the division. So I think for at least the Cardinals, you have to look good offensively and you have to be competitive in every game. You can't have these silly turnovers. You can't have bad clock management. It has to be pretty solid coaching and pretty solid schemes from the offense. So for the Cardinals, as long as they look like a good team, even though their record or their division standings may not reflect it, as long as they look like a good team by the eye test, I think that could be enough to save both the K's jobs and Kingsbury and Steve Keim.
You see, I do agree with that, but I also want to say that at a certain point, you have to start producing in the NFL. And I feel like Cliff Kingsbury, out of all people, knows that. He's the guy who got fired from his alma mater coaching. And, heading into his third year with Kyler, everybody feels like, even though they missed the playoffs last year, that this is pretty much a playoff robust year surrounding the Cardinals playoff expectations. And, that part of the reason why they fell apart, according to Cliff Kingsbury, down the stretch was the lack of veteran leadership. And what did they go out and do in the offseason? They got veteran leaders. They got J.J. Watt. They got Rodney Hudson. They got A.J. Green. Sprinkled those vets all throughout the depth chart. And, now's the time. Those excuses of not having the veteran leadership, even though Larry Fitzgerald isn't part of the team as we speak, it's over. The time for the Arizona Cardinals to produce is right here and right now. And sure, the NFC West is probably the best division in all of football right now. But you only have to play those guys 6 times, and you are expected to win a handful of those times anyways. There's the entire rest of the schedule that you have to go out and take care of. This team's talented. We all know it's talented. The fan base knows it's talented. And I think that's part of why it's so frustrating watching these guys not turn those talents into results.
And I think one thing is going to be interesting as we're going to make predictions on the division. I'm going to be curious what you guys say later as we go really, really quickly through 1, 2, 3, 4 in the division and make some other picks in the NFL. But what's really intriguing, you talked about the lack of leadership, but also those crazy turnovers, penalties at the worst time, pre-snap penalties, which absolutely drive coaches crazy. And so here's what's interesting to me, especially as we look at week 1. In Tennessee, in Nashville, where it's going to be what I call hot, humid, and loud. And it's on the offensive line to get after that Tennessee defense. But we all know what happens. All these guys are going to have to now be reaccustomed to playing with crowd noise, which we didn't have last year. We know how that affects an offense. We know how it can affect an offensive line because you kind of have to wait perhaps that extra half second just to make sure the ball is snapped because you don't want to leave early and get a false start. And so on top of all that, we now have Josh Jones starting at right guard. And Alex, you were right on with this. Most of you guys were. I just thought that they would go with the veteran, at least in the first game on the road in a hostile environment. But they're going with Josh Jones, and that's going to be loud in there. He's going to have all his wits about him, be poised, and not have those 5-yard penalties that all of a sudden make 1st and 10, 1st and 15, or make 3rd and 3 a manageable third down, make it 3rd and 8. And because we know it gets louder on 3rd down and in the red zone. So I'm very intrigued to see what happens with Josh Jones in this game. And as Cliff Kingsbury admitted on Wednesday, guys, he admitted that, yes, he's our guy, but if he needs a break, if he's struggling, we have no problem going with either Brian Winters or Justin Murray. So I think that's going to be the fascinating thing to watch with how that development is at right guard.
Yeah, but at least you have those veterans if you need to go to them. Of course, Josh Jones, we don't have a ton of regular season tape on him as far as like potential with penalties. He looked good on tape in the preseason, I thought, but that's obviously going to be a big key. I mean, they led the league in false start calls against them last year, which, Howard, you're absolutely right, really derailed them. The offensive line, I'm curious how exactly they'll look this year. Last year, it was really sort of the tale of two sides, because in pass protection, one of the best in the NFL. Really did a nice job of creating clean pockets and giving Kyler Murray some time. While on the run blocking side, statistically one of the worst in the NFL. As far as stuff rate, adjusted line yards, really didn't give much room at all. So I'm curious just how maybe Josh Jones would be better equipped than a Justin Murray would be in that regard. I know that's what Brian Winters is more specialized in, as he struggles more as a pass protector. So I'm curious exactly how the protection will look. And if, it's not like Tennessee has this dynamite pass rush either. I mean, their defensive front really struggled to put any pressure last year. They have a few guys. They brought in Bud Dupree. They still have Simmons. But, this could be a game where it could be an interesting tell. It's like, okay, they're on the right track. Their run blocking looks a little bit better. Or if they still can't get anything going on that respect, maybe a little bit concerning.
Yeah, that was kind of the point I was going to bring up is, yeah, Josh Jones is young and you want to see protections against Kyler Murray, but the Titans – it's one of the reasons why people aren't that high on the Titans this season. Their secondary is really worse than the Cardinals after that Butler retirement, because they are not starting their first-round pick. They are probably going to sit him for this first game. And right now, they got Janoris Jenkins as one of their cornerbacks. They have a second-year guy as their other cornerback. And when you look at that pass rush, they brought in Bud Dupree, but like you said, he's recovering from a torn ACL. The Titans were one of the worst teams in the last 30 seasons at giving up first downs on third down opportunities. Over 50% of the time they give up a first down on the third down. So this Titans defense, not that strong, and this could be a great game for a Josh Jones to build that confidence up, and for Kyler Murray to build that confidence up, because we know the way he was talking at the end of last season, he does not want to get hit anymore. So this could be a good game for Kyler just to build up that confidence, and he won't be seeing any ghosts, I think, in this game on Sunday.
Absolutely. And I think whenever it comes to the right guard position, I think they had to go with the hot hand, with only 2 preseason games played and Justin Murray and Brian Winters both out for an overwhelming majority of training camp. They know what they were getting in a guy like Josh Jones. They don't know what Justin Murray looked like this year. They don't know what Brian Winters looked like this year. So at least whenever they put Josh Jones in to start the game on Sunday, they already have a familiar sense of what to expect out of him, at least going forward into the regular season. And I think Cliff Kingsbury said it best at practice today. The Titans, they play the game of possession very, very nicely. So every time the Cardinals touch the football, they're going to have to make it count more times than not. And there's a lot of puzzle pieces to the Titans defense that are either missing or, just not quite fitting correctly. But we have to remember, everybody in the NFL can play. That's why they're in the NFL, So granted, there's not a whole bunch of superstars on the Titans defense. We already talked about Bud Dupree. A lot of people were kind of wary on him. Was he a product of TJ Watt and the rest of the Steelers defense? Can he actually get after the quarterback? And I think we'll find out in week 1.
Yeah, no, all those things are right on. And I think it's a very intriguing matchup when you look at this first week of the season. And of course, San Francisco opens against Detroit. The Rams have the Bears on Sunday night, and Seattle goes to Indianapolis. So, right off the bat, you've got 2 teams that will probably win. Of course, you never know in the NFL. We all know that. Seattle could get a little battle from Indianapolis, depending on the quarterback situation, but you just can't start falling behind in the division. And so this will be, as you guys have pointed out, a very, very intriguing matchup. And the one thing about it, we hear all this maximizing possessions. Kyler Murray said it. Cliff Kingsbury said it. They talked about getting the Titans off the field because they can just eat up clock with the running game and Derrick Henry. And yet the one thing the Cardinals don't do for the most part, is with this up-tempo offense, is run clock. And if all of a sudden you get a 3 and out and they take 45 seconds off, then your defense is right back out there. And I think a lot of times that can be detrimental to the defense. And so I don't expect to see this, but I wonder if maybe you should mix it up a little bit, come out up tempo and get the Titans on their heels a little bit. And maybe the next time, slow it a little bit, just take your time. I'm not saying, let the whole, second clock, the whole 40-second clock run out, but maybe take your time a little bit, but still, get into your tempo. Because I think sometimes going too up tempo can be your own worst enemy.
Yeah, we kind of saw that in the preseason too. I know it's preseason and they weren't running their regular stuff, but it was sort of a good look as to what happens when they go 3 and out. It's like 30 seconds, 30 seconds, 30 seconds. And time of possession for when the starters went against the Chiefs in that last game was pretty stark. So, and Kyler mentioned that today at practice, as you mentioned. It's tricky because, they brought in Cliff Kingsbury to run this air raid up tempo, quick offense that would kind of score in a blur, kind of draw defenses off guard. But at the same time, if it's not working, which we definitely saw towards the end of last season, they're just giving the ball right back really quickly, like you mentioned. So you're right. I mean, I'm really curious. I know that on ESPN, Rex Ryan said this week he wants the whole air raid system gone. I don't know if it has to be that dramatic, but I think, Howard, you're right. I think if they did, put Kyler Murray under center, maybe take some more time, run some more play action as opposed to these RPOs, then they could potentially sort of control the game a little bit more as opposed to going lightning speed. And then if something's in their way, then they kind of trip over it.
Yeah, because I think the Cardinals are kind of going to need to score a lot of points if they want to win this game because of what we've been saying with their secondary getting a little bit weaker, like seemingly, a week and a half before the season started. And the Titans, they know their limitations. They know they're not a strong defensive team, but what do they have? They have 2 elite wide receivers, A.J. Brown, Julio Jones. They're going to be throwing the ball all over the field. And Derrick Henry, we know he's a beast. We know he can rush for 2,000 yards. He averages 5 yards per carry in his career. But in the month of September, he's averaging below 4 yards per carry. So the Titans know that. They're going to come into this game. They're going to use Derrick Henry maybe a little bit more as a decoy because everyone knows Derrick Henry wants to run all over you. But maybe they pull the ball back with Tannehill and they start to unload it with a little play action. Utilize Julio in their first game. Now, the real question is, will A.J. Brown play? Because he hasn't really been practicing, so we don't really know about his status just yet. But if A.J. Brown's one of those guys, I think he said he played the last with a torn meniscus. I had him on my fantasy team last year. He scored 7 straight weeks. Like A.J. Brown, if he's on the field, this man is probably going to touchdown. So I think the Cardinals are going to need to put up some points because A.J. Brown and Julio Jones with Tannehill and Derrick Henry, those boys are going to put up some points themselves.
Yeah, I don't think the Cardinals were exactly excited to see the Julio Jones trade to Tennessee and getting him fresh off of a preseason and, on the road into a home opener. But, I mean, Budda Baker talked about it in, following practice today. The key to stopping the Titans and everything that they do starts and, begins with stopping a guy like Derrick Henry. Stopping Derrick Henry is a very tall task, and not a whole lot of people had success with it last year. Obviously, he rushed for over 2,000 yards, but we also got to remember the Titans are coming pretty much fresh off of a preseason game. The Cardinals, their third and final game, got canceled. The Cardinals aren't exactly used to that type of heat. I mean, we all live in Arizona. We all know exactly what heat is. But, playing an NFL game in that environment and then, that humidity as well, it's not exactly favorable for the Cardinals. We have to remember they're going to the East Coast as well. So, these guys haven't exactly played a live football game at 10 a.m. very many times throughout their careers.
Yeah, that's very true. Of course, the Cardinals have a bunch of them when they're on the road, but it's a good point. And even though we know the heat here in Phoenix, let's remember this team had a Club Med training camp with practices inside the dome. And now, of course, they're outside at their facility in Tempe, but they're practicing early in the morning, which, of course, they changed a little bit on Wednesday. They were supposed to go, I think it was at 8:30, and instead they went at 9:15. So it would be just a little bit warmer. And so, but still, that game is going to be at noon Central Time in Nashville, right at the heat of the day. And so it's supposed to be, I think we were looking today, it's supposed to be 88 is the high, and there'll be some humidity there, which of course we're not very accustomed to here. I know that Midwest humidity, and it is brutal. It is absolutely brutal. It's one of the reasons I asked Buda Baker today about, and this is true for the Titans too, even though they're used to the heat, none of these guys either have played 4 quarters. That's the one thing about preseason and now regular season football is your starters don't play a lot of snaps in the preseason. Now, except for the defensive line where there's a certain amount of rotation, a lot of guys play a lot of snaps. And I'm wondering what that's going to be like, especially in this first game where you have to be a lot of times at your best in the fourth quarter. And how much is that going to wear down the Cardinals, but potentially also the Titans when it gets really tough there if the game's on the line late in the fourth quarter. So those are a lot of different aspects of this game. And, defensively, we've alluded to the situation at the cornerback. And I'll tell you, there's going to be a lot of focus on rookies on this team. We know, Rondale Moore certainly on offense, and we're very all intrigued what his role is going to be, how many snaps, how are they going to try to get him the ball in space. But on the defensive side, of course, you have Zaven Collins calling the defensive signals. And Millard, you were talking, and Donnie, you were talking about these wide receivers. And it looks like Byron Murphy Jr. and Robert Alford will be the starting corners on the outside, at least when you're in your 2 cornerback defense. When it goes to 3, then it appears that Marco Wilson, the rookie 4th-round pick, will be on the outside, and with Murphy moving inside. Now, maybe they'll keep Murphy on the inside and put Wilson, or keep him on the outside and keep Wilson on the inside. But the slot is a tough thing to learn sometimes for young players. So if he's on the outside, that Ryan Tannehill is going to be looking to see where he is and challenge the rookie, whether it's with Brown or Julio Jones. And his feet could be put to the fire very quickly in this game on Sunday.
Yeah, they have a lot of faith in Marco Wilson throwing him out there. And, they do like him a lot. He performed really well. And, in the preseason, especially that first game against Dallas and his first looks. So it took him maybe 10 snaps for him to really sort of feel more comfortable, and then he sort of got there. So, yeah, that'll be interesting to see. They like him on the inside and outside. They like Murphy on the inside and outside. I'm curious if they're going to stick with putting one guy in one spot and the other in the other, or they might kind of switch them back and forth to divvy up the looks a little bit. With the Titans, if Brown and Jones are on the outside and they have Marco Wilson on the inside, then maybe he might be guarding somebody like an Adam Humphries, who has been a vet and may not be the biggest name in the world, but has been a pretty effective slot receiver for a number of years now with multiple places. So it'll be definitely a test for him. For Zaven Collins, he's going to be really tested in his first game as sort of the quarterback of the defense at inside linebacker. Going up against a run-heavy team like the Titans, but now that they have a whole other wrinkle in Julio, we'll see what exactly their passing game looks like. They also don't have Jonnu Smith anymore, so I'm curious if it'll be a little bit more of a vertical look. So he'll have to deal with that. And you mentioned offensively, I'm really eager to see what they do with Rondale Moore, because he provides such an opportunity for them to attack an area of the field that they really didn't last year. And that's sort of that intermediate range, 5 yards to 20 yards over the middle. They didn't look that way a ton. And now having Rondale Moore, little slants over the middle. If you can get him the ball in jet sweeps, there's so many ways you can get him the ball in space, and that's going to be key for them.
We just hope real quick that the 5 foot, whatever Murray is, how tall is he? Not very. We just hope he can find the 5'7" more over the middle. So that'll definitely be interesting to see, guys.
Yeah, I think we're just going to see a package of just design plays for Rondale Moore where they're just getting him the ball whenever they can with screens or just in space. I think he's just going to be someone that touches the ball maybe more than we even realized this season. So, again, for your fantasy managers in deeper leagues, go watch out for him. But when talking about the Cardinals defense, I feel like and this is the kind of game where they're probably going to have to generate that pass rush because, like we were saying, Julio and A.J. Brown are 2 tough dudes to stop. And so I just think the Cardinals, they're going to need to get in Tannehill's face and kind of throw him off the mark a little bit. That Titans offense, a lot of it, it's just about rhythm and timing, and that's a lot with these RPOs and play action design plays. So for the Cardinals defense, how much does a J.J. Watt play in his first game? How big of an impact can he make? Is he in a decline? He still looks pretty good when he's healthy, but he is a guy over the age of 30 who's dealt with a lot of injuries in his career. Got some inexperienced players with Zaven Collins. Isaiah Simmons, he's in his second season, but still probably a raw player. So this Cardinals defense, I still like the pass rush. I like the front seven. I feel like they're probably going to have to play through their front seven in this game if they want to pull out a win.
Yeah, definitely. And something we have to remember heading into Tennessee too is that the Cardinals interior at inside linebacker combined 1 year of experience between Zaven Collins and Isaiah Simmons. Not exactly phenomenal, or at least ideal going into the season. But, the best way to get that experience is to throw them out there, have them try to tackle guys like Derrick Henry. But something we also have to remember too, while they will be having to worry about Derrick Henry, the Cardinals like both those guys in certain pass coverage scenarios as well. And whenever they have that 3 linebacker package with Simmons, Zaven Collins, and then Jordan Hicks, Isaiah Simmons is usually on the outside, is more kind of like a dime or like nickel backer. So they're going to be in coverage a lot. And like Millard alluded to, you have to worry about guys like A.J. Brown and Julio Jones coming across the middle and trying to make you look silly as well. So that will definitely be an interesting storyline to watch on the defensive side of the ball. On the offensive side of the ball, it feels like there's so much talent that there's got to be a mismatch somewhere, right? I mean, obviously they're going to have to really worry about DeAndre Hopkins. You're hoping that AJ Green can kind of, revive his career and show everybody exactly the receiver he was with the Bengals. People are really counting on Christian Kirk to take a step up. Let's not forget about the Cardinals running back 1-2 punch with Chase Edmonds and James Conner. There's a lot of expectations out of the team, out of both of those respective guys this year. But just focusing on Rondale Moore, it certainly feels like while the quantity of the reps may not exactly be there. I don't see him getting 15 or 20 looks or touches a game. That'd be crazy, especially with a guy like Hopkins still there. It feels like he will be, looked at quite a bit, and I think he'll make the most of his opportunities because the Cardinals, if any team was going to draft Rondale Moore and utilize him to what he does best, which is getting the ball in space and making people miss with his speed, it's going to be the Arizona Cardinals. They finally have him, and even the small bits we saw in preseason, like Alex said, super excited for him to watch, and I think he'll be a real treat for Cardinals fans.
Couple of names I think that are going to be very intriguing, and we're going to get to the picks in a moment. You mentioned Christian Kirk. He's in a contract year, and hardly anybody's been talking about him. Everybody's been talking about Rondale Moore. Everybody's been talking about A.J. Green. We don't have to talk about DeAndre Hopkins. We know what he can do. So I think this is certainly a key year for Christian Kirk, and he realizes that. On the defensive side, do I do this? Knock on wood. Robert Alford is 4 days away from, was it Friday? Yeah, 4 days away from the season opener, and he's healthy. So, which he wasn't for the last 2 years. Huge aspect of this team that he can come in, stay healthy, and play at a high level. But the guy that really, I think, wants to blow it out this year is Chandler Jones. 5 games last season, was hoping to get a new contract. I don't think it was as much about money as it was about wanting to be here and stay here and hoping that the Cardinals would commit to him beyond this last year of his contract. That wasn't going to happen. The Cardinals aren't going to pay big money yet. He is making $15.5 million this season, so it's not as if he's underpaid, but he knows that he's playing for a contract, coming off a game where he only played a season where he only played 5 games. So I think that, and let's remember too, he was not piling up sacks when he got hurt last season. Teams were paying a lot of attention to him, and it wasn't happening. Now maybe they won't be able to pay as much attention with J.J. Watt and some of the other pass rushers. I think every player's motivated. He's always been motivated, but I think it's going to go to another level with him this year where he wants to say, okay, Cardinals, you don't want to take care of it now? Well, let's see. Maybe you want to pay me in 8 weeks or after the season, after who knows what he puts up. So I think that's going to be a very, very big storyline throughout this season. All right, let's get to it. Let's go through this quickly. Let's start with the division and just go boom, 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 boom. Each of you, first, second, third, and fourth place in the NFC West. On the record.
On the record. All right. From the first place, I'm going to go with the Rams. Second place, I'll go Seattle with the stability. Third place, I'll go San Francisco, but I do think all 3 of those teams will win 10 games or more. And betting-wise, all 3 of them are their over-unders are over 10 wins or more. And then I'll have the Cardinals in fourth, which does not mean I have them necessarily missing the playoffs, but it's a really difficult division.
Yeah, it's almost impossible to get 4 teams into a playoff from a division, but I would agree. I'm not counting them out. I would agree I'm not counting them out. But number 1, I basically got the same rankings as Alex. Number 1, I'm going to Rams. You got the upgrade, Goff from Stafford. Number 2, I actually don't have the same rankings as Alex. I just lied. I have the 49ers number 2 because you got all your healthy players back. Nick Bosa, Jimmy G. Trey Lance might come in if Jimmy G gets hurt. I think he's probably going to be a stud for them. Number 3, I got Seattle. I just don't think they have – I think they have a super high floor, but maybe not the highest ceiling. Those 2 teams above them. And then the Cardinals, of course, consensus number 4. We'll see if Donnie changes it up, but I'm going to guess he's going Cardinals number 4 too. Let's see if you surprise me, Donnie.
Man, it's really hard to kind of go against the status quo, especially after you guys basically listed my list. I mean, I have the Rams winning the division. I think I agree with both of you guys. I wasn't the biggest Jared Goff fan, so I think they definitely upgraded whenever it comes to quarterback play with Matthew Stafford. And I think they have the play calling and the defense to definitely make things happen in the NFC West. Do I actually have the Seattle Seahawks? I mean, I just think with any, veteran defense like they have, and obviously Russell Wilson, if he could stop throwing the ball into the hands of other teams late in games, I think they'll be fine. I really, really do. It's just up to him to kind of cut those mistakes out. Number 3, I actually have the Arizona Cardinals. While they might be a consensus bottom, number 4 team in the NFC West, I think they do take a step up this year. And I don't know if that's me, hopefully thinking. I don't know if, that's just me kind of reading into the tea leaves a little bit. And then, finally at number 4, I have the San Francisco 49ers. And I really think that Trey Lance can be something solid in the NFL. I don't know what that situation is going to look like down the line as far as their quarterback play goes. I mean, obviously, I think they have one of the better defensive, units in the league. But, I mean, it feels like every year, 15 of their guys get hurt, and then they just have they have to deal with it, but they somehow remain competitive. San Francisco is a very weird football team to track and follow and stuff. But for what it's worth, the Cardinals did beat them last year, and I think the Cardinals did upgrade their roster just a bit. So yeah, give me Cardinals 3 and 49ers 4.
Wow, Donnie, I think we needed a little bomb sounder when you made that prediction. All right, Donnie. I mean, I can't argue with it. I mean, the 49ers did lose half of their team last year. So
it's so up for grabs, man. But I won't be surprised at any outcome of the NFC West whatsoever. I really won't.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if any team that finishes 1st or 4th. I am going to say I'm not as big on the Rams bandwagon as you guys and a lot of people who are talking about him as a Super Bowl team, as if Matthew Stafford is this magician and all of a sudden he's going to be able to throw the ball down the field. But to who? The X factor is Deshaun Jackson. He's their downfield threat. But he's hardly played games the last couple of years. He's 35 years old. And are you really counting on that to be able to play 17 games and have that consistent downfield threat? Everyone said Jared Goff couldn't throw it down the field. Well, he did when they got to the Super Bowl, and they had Brandon Cooks. And then the Rams traded him. They also had Todd Gurley back then. They don't have a running game. They have an offensive line that isn't as good as it once was. And while they have Aaron Donald and Jalen Ramsey, they've lost some guys on defense. I'm not as big on them. So here's what I'm doing in the division. I'm saying it's still going to be Seattle because they're always there. They're just always there in that hunt for the division. I think the 49ers are going to be 2nd. I do think they bounce back. And even with the issue, 2 years ago, even with Jimmy Garoppolo at quarterback, they got to the Super Bowl and had the Chiefs beat in the 4th quarter until the defense couldn't stop them. And then I say 3rd and 4th is going to come down to the last couple of weeks, just like it did last year between the Rams and the Cardinals. And we'll see how it all plays out. But I will say this, while it's unlikely that all 4 teams make the playoffs, if you look at those other divisions, if we just say whoever wins the NFC East, whichever team muddles out of that, wild card's not coming from that division. The NFC South, who knows what the Saints will do without Drew Brees? Can we automatically say the second place team is a wild card in that division? Maybe not. And the NFC North after the Packers, who do you have? The Bears? The Vikings? I don't think it's out of the question that all 3 teams could get into the playoffs, or besides the division winner. What it'll come down to is all these teams have to play well outside the division because they'll beat each other up in the division games, but you're going to have to win a lot of those out of division games, which I think they're capable of doing. So I'm not predicting it'll happen, but it certainly wouldn't surprise me because the rest of the NFC is just not that strong.
Yeah, and that's why this early season slate for the Cardinals is so important because you start off with 3 non-division games before they go play the Rams in Los Angeles. Titans this week, then they're at home against the Vikings, a team that probably will be better than they were last year just with injury luck, but is still has plenty of question marks. And then the Jacksonville Jaguars, that's a game they have to win, or else that would be a really disappointing loss if they left that one on the table. So they got to do really well these first 3 weeks. Because Howard, you're right. I mean, when it comes down to it, they got to win their non-division games to get there. I think, it's a race to 10 wins. If you can get to 10, you can go 2-4 in the division and still get to 10 wins. If you can get to 10, I think you're in a solid spot of that final playoff spot. If you get to 9, that 7th spot, an 8-8 team took it last year, the Bears. They took it by tiebreaker points over the Cardinals. If you can get to 9-8, maybe you're the only team 9-8 from the remaining pack. So
could be
definitely not impossible. I think the way that it's set up right now, it's it certainly is very possible. But they have to take care of business and win the games it's supposed to win.
And let's remember last year, the Cardinals, as we know, were 8-8. They were 4-0 against the NFC East. I mean, they just beat up on that very bad division, which of course means they were 4-8 in the other 12 games on the schedule. So they're going to have to dominate one of their divisions or some of those other games, and we'll see how that plays out. All right, last thing we do before we say goodbye, we're not going to go through all the divisions, but let's do this. Let's look at the top 4 in each conference, the 4 teams that we think will be in the divisional playoff. There's 4 in the divisional playoff, right? Before you get to the conference championship. So just go 1, 2, 3, 4, your 4 best teams in each conference.
Am I starting again, or does somebody else want to jump in?
I'll start you, Alex. Oh, really? Don't matter.
And then out of that, after you pick that 4, I guess the team you pick 1, you'll pick to go to the Super Bowl. But if it's someone different, because there might be an upset, go with that.
All right. I guess
pick the Super Bowl team.
Yeah. Okay. I'll try to go in order. I guess I'll put. I have the Rams, 49ers, Seahawks. I have those 3 making the postseason, and then I probably have the Buccaneers 2 as my top 4. And so if I had to rank those 4, I would probably go Seattle. I would probably go Tampa, Niners, Rams, number 1. And then out of the AFC, I probably got to go with the Chiefs, of course. You got to go with the Bills probably too. I'm really liking the Browns. I'll probably have them as my number 3 team. Then after that, it's actually kind of tough. I think I'm actually going to go, looking at it real quick, I think I'm going to ride. I'm going bold prediction. I'm riding with the Chargers as my number 4 team there. Chiefs number 1, Bills number 2, Browns number 3, and then Chargers number 4. And we're going to get a Chiefs-Rams Super Bowl. Wow. The big prediction by me, Chiefs in the Super Bowl.
Former Missouri Super Bowl before the Rams moved back to Los Angeles. But I got one thing before we move on. I want to make sure there, Millard, you didn't forget the Packers, did you?
Oh, I actually did. You're right. I actually did forget the Packers. But I think I would actually probably have the Packers above the Seahawks then. I'll swap those 2 out. I'll just try and quickly look at it. So you caught me, Howard. I did forget the Packers.
All right, who's next?
I'll jump in there just based off of that, because I'm going to go Packers number 1 in the NFC. It's the finale for Aaron Rodgers. Last year was sort of the Aaron Rodgers revenge tour. It came up just a little bit short. I think that this is the year that they can put it all together. Last year the defense wasn't as great as its talent was. This year they're bringing in a new coordinator, and I'm in on the Packers and what they look like right now. Number 2 is tricky, but I'll probably lean. Actually, no, I'm not. I'm actually pretty confident. Number 2, I think Tampa Bay is probably the most secure football team. Like, they're the team I know is going to win 13 or 14 games. They're running it back, and they're probably should be the Super Bowl favorites. And then 3 would be the Rams for me, and then 4 would be Seattle. And then and I like the hire Seattle made, Shane Waldron at that offensive coordinator. I think that he can make the game a little bit easier for Russell, who had to throw. They did the let Russell cook last year, where he was chucking the ball down the field a lot. I think they're going to make it a little bit easier on him this year. In the AFC, number 1's the Chiefs. Number 2 is the Bills. I know very unique predictions here, but. Mm-hmm. For me, I do really like what the Browns did. I love Jeremiah Owusu-Karamoah, the rookie who's going to be in the linebacker. Greg Newsome was a great pick, in my opinion. And getting John Johnson from the Rams, that defense could be really good with their spectacular running game and OBJ back. And then 4, I mean, like Miller said, it could be a number of teams. I'm not quite ready to put the Chargers at 4, but I do think that they can make the playoffs. An honorable mention is the Patriots for me. But I'm going to slide the Baltimore Ravens in there at the 4th spot.
Yeah, I kind of panicked a little bit. I'm not going to lie. I felt like I was on the clock. I felt like I had 2 seconds left. I was like, oh, Chargers. But yeah, the Baltimore is also a good pick. But I do like, that offense that the Chargers got going with Herbert, Eckler, and Keenan Allen, even though Eckler's got a little bit of an injury now all of a sudden.
Adding Corey Linsley at center was so massive for them too. And a great pick at left tackle with Slater. So yeah, they can make the playoffs for sure.
And they're healthy again. Let's see.
All right, it's to you, Donnie.
Well, to piggyback off of the Chargers point, for my money, the best uniforms in the NFL, without a doubt. Any uniform combination, phenomenal for them. So sticking to the AFC, I think it's basically a three-legged race between the Buffalo Bills, Kansas City Chiefs, and Cleveland Browns. And I think the Cleveland Browns have done a real solid job the last couple of years of putting together not only a competent front office, but just a dynamite roster through and through. I mean, every position you look, I mean, they have somebody really solid there. So it's really all a matter of them putting it together. But I feel like they've been paper champions for forever. The game of football isn't played on paper. So while I think they do have a contention for the best roster of the AFC, I don't think they're my number one AFC team at this point. So, reigning AFC champions, Kansas City Chiefs are, my number one team, followed closely second by the Buffalo Bills, obviously the Cleveland Browns at number 3. And I think the Tennessee Titans are at that number 4 slot for me. I feel like they play really good football throughout the entire year, and they're a team that whenever it gets to the playoffs, they know how to win. They play winning playoff football consistently. It's just a matter of them actually, doing the small things, putting it together. I don't think they have the firepower to match any of the above 3 teams in the shootout. But, if they catch any of them, in a snowy, cold playoff game, they're able to get Derrick Henry going, then, who really knows? Flipping to the NFC side, Tampa Bay Buccaneers are the only team in the Super Bowl era to return all 22 of their starters from the following year. And a lot of them took pay cuts to, running back with Tampa Bay. So that just shows you the kind of team culture and atmosphere and that kind of belief that they can go back to back there in Tampa Bay. So I have them there at my number 1 spot. Close second, and I would love to see another NFC championship game between them and the Packers. Green Bay, I think, like Alex said, it's the last dance for Aaron Rodgers. Nobody really knows what the future looks like between him and even Devontae Adams in Green Bay. I'd love to see that roster just make one more run at the Super Bowl. Number 3, I think the Los Angeles Rams, I think they have a very talented roster, despite Howard's alleged hate for them, apparently, that we just found out about on the podcast. I do think
they have Tutu Atwell. They don't have to go to Deshaun Watson.
Oh, right.
Robert Woods and Cooper Kupp, man, come on.
He's a good receiver, but I'm talking about a downfield threat. I mean, Robert Woods and Cooper Kupp are really good. I mean, I give you that, but they're not downfield threats, which is ostensibly why they got Matthew Stafford. So anyway, go ahead.
Watch the 150-pound Tutu Atwell fly down that sideline.
Hey, that is true. And I do want to point out, Jared Goff did not make any adjustments at the line of scrimmage. Sean McVay was pumping stuff into his ear. And as soon as that, radio connection cut out at 15 seconds left in the play clock, Jared Goff looked clueless. So I do think they upgraded at the quarterback position. The number 4 spot, there's a lot of different ways that you can go. I'm not really sure, but I'm looking at the NFC East right now. I think the Washington football team has a really, really good roster. They're just missing bona fide quarterback play. And I think they're maybe just a little too early for that. But I think the Dallas Cowboys do win that division this year, And I think I'll go ahead and slide the Cowboys up to that number 4 spot.
Ooh, wow. How about that? All right. It's my turn now. And I'll start with the AFC. And certainly Kansas City, is there at number 1. I like all your guys' love for the Browns because I'm with you on that. I think they might have the most balanced roster in the NFL. People forget they won 11 games last season. And if not for that crazy play at the goal line where the guy was reaching for the end zone, lost the ball, control went through and boom, all of a sudden it's a touchback, one of the dumbest rules in all of football. Who knows the outcome of that game against the Chiefs had that play not happened. So the Browns are in there. And I think Buffalo is number 2 right now. I like Cleveland at number 3. And we all seem to think that number 4 is a toss-up, and it probably is. But I just think the John Harbaugh-led Ravens are probably the team that will be number 4, although I think a team to keep an eye on if they get good quarterbacking is the Broncos. With that defense, they have a lot of talent around Teddy Bridgewater. I'm not sure if he's the guy that can take them there, but if he can play pretty solid football, this team could surprise, although number 4 would probably be a stretch for them. NFC, it's between the Packers and the Bucs for 1 and 2. And I'll say this, everyone's talking about this farewell tour for Aaron Rodgers. I would love to see him get the Packers to the Super Bowl, maybe even win it. And then all of a sudden, do the Packers move on from him? to play Jordan Love, really? After you go to a Super Bowl? That would be just tremendous to see how the Packers would deal with that. But those are two. I'm gonna still stick with Seattle in there, and my number 4 team is going to be San Francisco. I think that they will bounce back. They can run. They can play defense. We all know that, and that'll be my top 4. But I think it is a pretty good race between a bunch of teams for those spots. So Super Bowl's in Los Angeles, SoFi Stadium, and can it be the second year in a row that a team plays the Super Bowl in its home stadium? I guess you never know, but if the Rams get in, anything can happen in the postseason. And I'll say this might sound crazy to you guys. I'm certainly not going to pick the Cardinals as the 4th best team. However, if they play good enough football to get into the postseason, they could be one of the more dangerous teams to get to be there. Because there'll be teams that say, man, I don't want to play them. Because if they're in the playoffs, it means they played really consistent football. And I think they could be a tough out in the playoffs. So anyway, we've touched on a lot of stuff in this podcast. Good stuff. We'll be continuing to do it throughout the season. And so keep coming here at allcardinals.com for our podcasts and for all our written content and videos. And it's Sunday in Nashville, Cardinals in Tennessee. Okay, no analysis. Who wins the game on Sunday, Cardinals or the Titans?
I'm going – yeah, I'm going to agree with Alex there. I'm going to go with the Titans too. I think I think it's going to be a shootout, and the Titans come out on top with Julio Jones making some incredible catch.
All right, we've got 2 Titans, Donnie.
Titans, yep.
Titans?
Yeah.
Got a zag.
Well, I've gone back and forth only for this reason. Last year in week 1, I picked the 49ers, and the Cardinals won in San Francisco against the defending Super Bowl champions, who had not had a bunch of their injuries yet by that point. They'd had some, but not as many. So I'm almost tempted to pick the Titans because that'll be good luck maybe for the Cardinals. I think they got a heck of a shot going in there and winning this game. Everyone's down and they're 4th place. Cliff Kingsbury's on the hot seat. They're not that good. There was one list had him 24th in the power rankings. Really? 24th? Are you serious? I'm going to take the Cardinals to win. I hope that's not bad luck for them, but I'm going with the Cardinals. So we'll see how it all plays out. We'll be covering the game and everything leading up to it. So keep it right here at allcardinals.com. For Donnie Druin, Alex Weiner, Millard Thomas, I'm Howard Balzer, and enjoy it. Football season's here, and before we know it, it'll be February. Have a good night, everybody.